Hello and welcome to the video. I'm going to be making a door for the doorway on this building that I'm making for a diorama. The sort of style that we want to make it in is kind of like a steel door with sort of reinforcements on it, a bit like you'd find in an industrial unit or something like that. Okay, so I've just got this bit of card. It's actually the back of a writing notepad or something like that. It's about that thickness. It's not anything too terrible. It's just a little scrap that I picked up. Doesn't have to be anything brilliant, although you can buy a decent card if you want to use a decent card. Personally, I can't see the point when you can get it for free. Okay, so what we've got to do is measure the gap on the original house and transfer that onto this bit of card, and we'll cut that to size. Okay, the next part's done. What we got is the outline of the door, as you can see there, and what I've actually done, I've marked on it where I'm going to put the lock to the door, and also these bits along here and the edges. They're going to have like a metal framework to them of almost like angle iron, but we'll do that probably with plastic card because it's stiffer than the card that I'm using. Okay, so the door's basically done. We've got to do some angle irons now for, like I said, for the edging. And for that I've just found this piece of card, which is a little bit thinner and easier to cut. I've now cut that strip off and I've scored down the middle. Now what we're going to do with that is fold it to produce pieces like that. Okay, the angle iron is now on around the edge of the door, and you can see it's now sort of produced a frame which is very slightly at 90 sort of degree angles all the way around, giving it a nice sort of like industrial look. Next step is, now that the door is completely constructed, as you can see there, I've added a lock and the centre strut that goes across the centre of the door for strength. We're going to now do a little bit of what will be rust holes in it, and I'm going to do that down the bottom of the doorway. And to do that, because the door is constructed of card, we need to soften the card with some water. So I've got some water here. So just with a simple paintbrush, dab a little bit on the bottom of the doorway, and we want that to soak in nicely for a little while. And then we're just going to get the sharp end of a knife or a needle or something like that, or a sharp pointed piece, and we're going to pick away at that very softly and gently until we've made a little hole in the bottom of it. So after the paint has the water rather has soaked into the card, you can pick at it a little bit to make holes and rust effect on the bottom of the door. I've done it on the bottom of the door because most of the moisture and dampness would probably be at the bottom on this one, so you can see it's quite a rough texture, but we'll sort that out as we paint it, weather it, and do the next step. Okay, next step is I've painted the door in NATO brown, which is a Tamiya colour. I forget what number it is now, but you'll be able to find it, it's no problem, it's quite commonly available, and that gives it a good deep base for the rust colour. But before we continue, we need to put some texture on it, because rust is quite has a texture to it, so we're going to replicate that by using watered down tile adhesive. Now you can get this in anywhere really, so that's how I've done it. I've just put that down with a bit of water in there to make it a sort of, you know, fairly thick but not too watery, but enough to give it a good bit of texture. Okay, we'll apply that to the door and then we'll come back and see how that is. Right, we can see here that I've put the tile grout stuff on there now. I've just stippled it on there, and you don't have to sort of push it around any old how. It just gives it a grainy texture, a bit like real corrosion would be on a door. Okay, so we started the rusting process. As you can see here, we've just got mixed up some paint that's in a sort of like orangey brown colours, because that's what colour rust is. Sort of represents rust nicely on the door. And I've just started to dab it on all over, particularly around the holes first of all, because that's where the most of the rust will concentrate. Then as you drift up, you want to sort of drift it up, maybe a little bit with sort of like a bit patchier, a bit more of the brown showing through. But it really doesn't matter, because rust goes in any sort of shades and whatnot. And then we'll do some more shading with some pastels in a minute. Now that the coloration has been put on, I've added a little bit of artist pastel, which you can see there, and I've added it to the bottom of the doorway. And I'm now going to blend that with a soft dry brush. Just blend it in, and it will create sort of like the highlights of the rust colour. You only want to do that in certain selected areas, because it wouldn't be everywhere. But I think that's got quite a nice sort of rusty look to the door. So here's the finished article. Obviously I've used a lot of stuff on there to get to that rusty colour. If you've never used pigments before, I'd recommend using them. You can get lots of different commercially available ones. I use a selection. I use some that I buy ready-made, and also I use some pastels, which will be demonstrated here. This is just using pastels, and also incidentally some of the paint I used is also watercolour. But you can get some nice effects. It's just trial and sort of error really. Experiment, see what ones you like, what ones you don't. Okay, thanks for watching.